What if? An apple and a knife. Part 1. Story by Ayed Hindi. Prologue. All of us are born unprepared for life, dependent and clueless, yet for some, no matter what age they would be, they never can and never will adapt, contend with, and accept life as it is, vibrant, changing, and unperfect. They are perpetually confused by time and space in their own surroundings and never get the sense that it's the right one for them. Living among obscured particulars known to them only by certain names but never feeling at home in any place and among the others, relentlessly despondent by the measure of disparity that they perceive amid whining aspirations, cherished desires, and painful realities and the eventual downfalls, existence itself becomes a bane and a scourge while constantly emitting hate and detest of everything. Eventually, they left themselves with few choices to make, either to cut short, hoping for a better second return, or to endure the struggle for much-awaited imaginary achievement in their lifetime and perhaps a fully sublime finality. The choice is theirs. Chapter 1. Simon, a physics teacher at a public high school, slowly trudged the long alleyway as he was descending on his way towards Bastard's Delight High Street. It was dark in that early evening, and while he was looking around through the gleaming light that shimmered from the brightened windows at dinner time, he had an internal giggle in a wave of sarcasm likely resulted from envy or rather loathing for the image of caged humans inside the red brick walls, which is considered a proper social habitat to live in, passed through his mind while observing people busying themselves eating their offered ration. A certain interpretation glanced through his mind. Not bad, he told himself. I couldn't hold my sight from night peeping at the zoo. It was totally unbearable. I feel like I'm drowning. He couldn't restrain himself from performing wicked acts, and he pulled from his pocket a device that triggered the parked car's alarm signal as he started running in joy and happiness. He ended up at the Night Scoundrel pub, looking through the dreadful, dirty, and foggy windows. He barely located Vera with her long brown hair among the crowd, and then he went inside, maneuvering through bodies and scattered tables. He reached for her back while she was chatting with the bartender. He looped his left hand around her thin waist like a lariat and pulled her away from the bar. They sat around a small table tucked away in a corner, and after having a couple of drinks, they started discussing future arrangements for the planned wedding. Not everything was smooth going as a few differences emerged between them, not least the cost, among other difficult issues that marred their relationship. Simon, as a teacher, could not offer the high demands she was after, nor was he happy to waste money on superfluous formalities, according to his inner feelings. They went out of the pub in a gloomy mood, and they walked in silence for a couple of streets before he said goodbye to her and went back to his place. On his way, he kept arguing with himself over the big bonanza splurge on others' happiness. After all, most of the planned invitees are of her friends, and as for himself, he had no one to invite to his future wedding. In his flat at the 5th floor of an old building, Simon put the headphones on his ears and started listening to his favorite music, and while he was in the kitchen, he fancied an apple to eat outside on the balcony on a mild spring night. He grabbed a big apple from the fridge and a knife on his way towards the balcony. He pulled the glass door in, and while he was stepping out, he stumbled upon the raised step leading out to the balcony. He fell and, halfway, he threw the apple and the knife to free his hands and hold on the railing. He managed to grab the metal firmly, corrected his body and praised himself for not banging his head on the concrete floor, though his only regret was the loss of an apple and the kitchen knife. He went back in and decided that it's a bad night anyway and best is to spend it sleeping and have a nice dreams. Chapter 2. In the early morning of the next day, Simon heard the doorbell ringing combined with a loud banging on the front door. Who could be at this time? Asked himself while walking towards the door. He opened the front door. There were the police, and they asked for his name. After confirmation, the police told him he needed to escort them down to the police station. He was dragged hastily, and after a few formalities, including a mugshot and fingerprints being taken, he was later driven to court, and subsequently he was charged with murder. The police report is stated in front of the judge and reads as follows: 2 objects were thrown in the evening from a balcony. First, an apple fell on a moving car. The apple hit the car's front screen with force, leading the car to swerve and hit a lamppost, which in turn fell on the car and caused the death of the driver sitting in the aforementioned car. A second object was thrown at the same time. It was a knife, and it landed with direct impact on a passing pedestrian down under the balcony on the sidewalk and caused fatal injuries. Later, the victim succumbed to his injuries and died despite efforts to save his life from the paramedics attending the crime scene. The report continued that witnesses came forward and described what happened that evening and declared that the items were thrown from the accused's balcony. After matching the fingerprints and the DNA left on the knife with the accused's own, the report concluded that we could confirm that the knife belonged to the accused after an exhaustive interrogation. The accused's response was not to deny the act of throwing the items mentioned in the crime scene, but he stated that it happened as a reaction due to his own stumbling on the balcony while he was holding the items in both of his hands, and the items flew away while he was trying to grab the railing and protect himself from falling. He stressed in his answer that what occurred that sorry evening was never intended or premeditated, and he absolutely had no intention to harm anyone nor had ever control over the force of gravity that caused the victims to suffer and lose their own lives. Although none of the witnesses can confirm the act of stumbling on the balcony or that what happened was wholly unintentional, the police reported in a separate report that one of the victims who died as a result of knife injuries had previously had an altercation with Simon, and it was reported to the police. The court procedures took a few weeks while Simon was under detention, and at the end, the judge was not convinced that what happened on that evening was accidental nor an involuntary deed after listening to crime experts and reading the police reports. After listening to crime experts and reading the police reports, the judge decided that Simon had cynically planned and executed a deliberate reckless act out of revenge and bitterness that overwhelmed his sick mind, and he should be locked and serve life imprisonment for the heinous crimes he had committed and an extra 2 years for the acts of hooliganism, and he ordered him to pay for the emotional and property damage. Thought. Hearing the verdict, Simon was outraged and started shouting, "You're a corrupted human with a rotten soul. There are no seeds or even a hint of justice on this land. Damn you all." The judge didn't bother with those loud screams, as it was a common occurrence during court procedures. Thought, for Simon misbehaving at the court, the judge imposed extra year of conviction for insulting the court while the security restrained him with force as he was dragged back to the detention cell. Simon wasn't paying attention to the fact that all that happened in the court was just pure business. He let his emotions burst in an uncontrollable manner in the court hall and failed to grasp that as long as he admitted his deeds, the intention to commit the crime, which he denied was a deliberate act to cause harm, represented the judge with an opportunity for imposing a long sentence, kept the appeals rolling over, and saved the business running. Chapter 3. After the court concluded with a conviction and the life in prison sentencing that was issued and delivered, Simon was handcuffed, taken into a security van waiting outside the court for him, and he was transported to the maximum security Luster Green Mansion Correctional Center. Upon arrival at the prison, he was handed over and welcomed by the security staff of that prison, and he was registered on the ignoble list of prisoners in their custody, and then he was driven to a room where he was lectured by a custodian officer. For a start, you've been subscribed and incarcerated for a very long time, and for a good reason. Congratulations! You've killed 2 people as a hobbyist, not bad. Fewer people, more green earth. Never mind my sole sarcasm. You'll be housed in one of our quarters. There are 3 of them at the center. The first, high-class Brazen Lobster Quarter, and that's only for mass murderers who are there indefinitely. The second-class Yellow Grass Quarter for the hobbyist like you who managed to kill only a few, and the third, lower-class White Chocolate Quarter for the amateurs who killed only 1 person. We were debating before your arrival at our center where to house you because there is in your case a hint of suspicion that your acts were undeliberate. After all, we decided, while taking account of your genius planning and the fact that the White Quarter is fully packed with nouveau murders, to place you in the Yellow-Green Quarter, where you'll have your own cell and not share it with anyone else. We have here at the center the community games where all of our clients, who by the way are all of them convicted murderers, from both the White and Yellow Grass Quarters compete against each other under coaching from the Green Quarter residents, and therefore you'll have to pick a mass murderer or a serial killer coach to guide you in their team. These games are wholly sponsored, and the winners will receive funds where they can spend it the way they like after clearing the center's shares of that money. Notice, to be a good citizen in our center is to make money and share it with us. Competing in games and winning is one way to achieve such statues. However, if you double our shares of money for a consecutive period of time, you'll get the perfect citizen statues where you'll have your own servants and followers. It's a privileged statue to achieve, therefore, be ambitious and fight your way for the money resources. There is always something to gain. You're a physics teacher, and because of that, you'll get chipped with a tiny microchip in your body instead of a metal chain around your waist or neck. Those chips are embedded in all of our educated customers at the center as a monitoring device for their own and ours best interests. Nonetheless, it's a friendly procedure and unharmful for the foreseeable future, aimed only at minimizing interventions and decreasing red tape. Besides, you should know that most of your information is built into the chip, and it may contain incentive commands and a digital motivator while you're prompted for your own good. At our venue, you'll find many sellers offering various types of provisions and accepting many forms of transactions, but be aware that some of the highly desired goods are only available for the citizens endowed with higher stature at our compound. That alone should motivate you for higher aims and hard competition against your fellow subscribers. One thing I have to mention is that our core values at the Green Mansion Correctional Center differ slightly from the broader norms and beliefs out there. You'll get acquainted with them shortly and will be praised warmly once you toe the line accordingly. Chapter 4. After Simon was logged in, scanned, processed, and planted with an electronic chip into his left arm inside the security compound, he was led out of the admin building through the hallway towards a vestibule and out into the vast open field, escorted by 2 officers. They walked over a long arcade, trespassing that field, which was surrounded by high fences and observation towers. On the perimeter stood 3 separate buildings. On Simon's left-hand side, there was a 3-story green building. In front of him, there was a bigger 5-story yellow building, and on his right-hand side, there was even a 7-story white building. All 3 buildings were built in ziggurat style, rectangle-shaped with receding floor levels. Each upper story is smaller than the lower one, tapered at the top level, and it was covered with colored glass at the apex. While Simon was continuing to walk through the field, there stood an amphitheater called the Sandmorph Arena, where the games take place, as he had been told by the escorted officer. Simon inquired, "What type of games are taking place in the arena?" The officer replied that, like gladiators' games or physical combat between the participants, we have a great gym to train your body for such brutal occasions. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached the yellow building through an electronic door in the fence, and from there, they went inside into the reception lobby. He was placed in an underground dormitory, in a single-cell small room poorly equipped with a toilet, sink, metal shelving, and a bed, but there were no windows to the outside, just walls and a metal door with a small glass opening in the upper part of that door so he could observe the light coming from the building courtyard through the small window. The next day, early in the morning, the prison's siren blared, and he needed to stand in front of the door window as the prison guards marched on to check out the residents. After that, he was informed that he needed to prepare to leave to work outside in the field with a group of prisoners. The prisoners were shackled on the feet and transported in a bus to a remote open field. That was the first encounter for Simon with the other residents, and vice versa. He knew none of them as he started digging with a shovel in the ground, following orders from the guards. It was a hard job he had never done as such before, and he needed breaks of rest more often than the others under the guards' loud screams. A sudden commotion took place between the prisoners, and they started beating each other. Simon was puzzled as to what to do while watching the guards spray the fighting groups with water. The work stopped, and the guards went to assist some of the injured prisoners. At that moment, the prisoners together attacked the guards, took their weapons and controlled them, grabbed the shackles' keys and freed themselves, put the shackles on the guards, and dragged them to the bus. They all left, while Simon was the only one left behind with shackles. Simon couldn't wait for the security officers to arrive at the location as he started walking with difficulty towards the opposite side of the road, heading towards a small wooded area on the horizon. Seeing that the security guards were approaching the place from afar and hearing the chopper buzzing in the sky, he crawled in between the shrubs, tardily moving until he managed to get inside that distended wood. He used the tools he had grabbed from the work to hammer the chains, set himself free from them, and started running aimlessly in the wood, as he had no idea where to target. Chapter 5. Simon continued his escape among unknown routes in the woods until he reached a small cliff overlooking a farm. He observed there were a couple of farmers busy pruning the plants. Then he sloped slowly towards a small hut in the farm and nipped an unguarded bicycle left near the hut after checking if it's in working order and started immediately cycling away on a dirt road. Despite hearing some angry noises from behind him, he kept on pressing ahead and drove through the tiny road ahead. After a period of cycling, Simon came across a sporadic wooden houses scattered in a small hamlet in arboreous landscape around crofts and barns. He slowed down his drive and started peering around cautiously. While passing by, he saw by mere chance an old man sitting on a rocking chair in a porch of a small house. The view towards the property was hidden by lush trees and overgrown bushes. Only from a certain angle can be witnessed by the passer-by. Simon, seeking some help, approached the old man after crossing into the front garden and greeted him, but no reply back. Simon kept looking at the old man carefully, and then he decided best is to inspect the motionless body. Nonetheless, he couldn't touch him out of thoughtfulness, and he concluded that there is something not right with that person, and probably the old man is already dead on his chair. Sensing an opportunity concordant with his own troubled consciousness, Simon went into the old man's property after carefully opening the front door and observing any movement in there. He washed himself, picked up some food, changed his prison clothes, and found a wallet in a drawer. Then he took a letter from the post and checked out the name and address of the old man. Before leaving the property, Simon saw a car key lying on the tea table in the living room. He seized it and went outside. He took a smartphone from over a table on the porch, turned it on using the old man's thumbprint, and headed towards the driveway. He brought in the bicycle and hid it in the garage and then opened the car and started it on after placing the phone on the dashboard and using its sat-nav for direction. He then drove away after ascertaining his location. Upon arranging his escape from the old man house, he set up the sat-nav for dodging any motorway and driving only through local roads in order to circumvent any encounter with the police and traffic cameras on the way towards a small town, as he has no driving license or any other documents. His aim was to drop the car somewhere in a car park around the town and take the bus towards the city. From there, he would rent a place for further planning. He stopped the car before getting into town. It was late in the evening, and he started thinking to himself, "What is my plan? I've never thought of escaping, and if I have nowhere to go, no documents or money which is in the bank but my wallet and my documents locked in a safe inside that prison, then what's the plan? Go back to prison and hand myself over like any proper citizen? But that's the utmost unjust towards myself, let alone being convicted for doing nothing for a crime I've not committed. Now the chance unexpectedly came to redeem myself and set me free." He opened the phone and started browsing the call logs, contacts, and records of conversions, if any, and Simon discovered through his search that the old man has no recent contacts except with his physician. No family member or friend exists on the list. He told himself that Roger, the old man, is lonely like me, so perhaps I could stay at his residence for a while and make contact to issue my documents and a new bank card to access my money, and possibly escaping from the country, It seems a dumb and dicey idea, but I am willing to risk. Chapter 6. After carefully pondering the matter, Simon went on to do some shopping and returned back towards Roger House in the village. Down there, he faced a dilemma: what to do with Mr. Roger. He asked himself, would it be better to call the doctor and inform them about the current condition, or just depose the body somewhere? Eventually, after preparing himself and arranging the scene, Simon called the doctor, and the ambulance arrived at the property. After an initial test, they confirmed that Mr. Roger died many hours ago, and the medical examiner had to decide the exact cause and time of death. Nonetheless, Mr. Roger's body was taken to the morgue for further examinations, while the police officers who arrived at the property asked Simon about his relation to the deceased and the circumstances surrounding the death of Mr. Roger. Simon, on his turn, claimed that he is Mr. Roger's adopted son, and he had arrived this evening to visit him. He was shocked to witness the painful event, as he was at a loss for what to do. The police took the statement and more details about Simon, then inspected the property briefly, and before they left the house, the police asked him if he is going to stay at the property, and Simon replied yes, but for a short period of time. Upon their departure, Simon was relieved, since the procedure went exactly according to his plans, unhindered, and he attributed it to the fact that Mr. Roger was gravely ill and the paramedics knew his case beforehand and were not surprised to learn of his death. However, he was worried that the police would start digging in the false information he provided them, and they might sense the wicked plot he devised, and that could potentially unravel the whole plan if they found out inconsistencies in his previous statement. He spent the night acquainting himself with Mr. Roger's past and personal affairs, while he went over the documents, photo albums, and every letter he found in the house in preparation for any forthcoming police interview. In the meantime, Simon was anxious and looking for news updates concerning the jailbreak he was implicated in without his consent or planning. In the morning, Simon started contacting his bank, and they agreed to issue him a new card that would be sent to his new address. After that, he contacted the relevant department to issue him a new ID card and driving license to replace the lost ones. By midday, he received a call from the mortuary informing him that the coroner had finished the report on Mr. Roger and concluded that his death was natural due to aging and long-term illness, and as Simon is his next of kin, he would contact the funeral agency to take care of Mr. Roger's body. Going through the documents belonging to Mr. Roger, Simon found the insurance policy and the personal will that arranged the funeral, and the possessions after his death would be transferred to a charity as a donation. He then contacted the funeral agency and informed them about the death of Mr. Roger and his wishes, as stated in the will, to be cremated in a simple procession. It was a very busy day for Simon, and it was culminated by the news he heard over the old radio belonging to Mr. Roger that the jailbreak was a total failure attempt by the prisoners, and all of them were eventually caught alive or dead shortly after the incident in the road construction. To his utmost surprise, the news didn't mention a missing prisoner. He thought either there was confusion or it was simply a cover-up operation from the prison admin to divert attention over illegal forced labor that was practiced with the prisoners without permission, and that might also explain the relaxed police officers' disposition who attended the property.